Hello, and welcome to Design Matters, where we talk about matters of design because it does. I'm Trevor Page.
Hey, I'm Steve Martinez. Just so we get this out of the way, we're both employees of Blizzard Entertainment currently, and we do this podcast because we love talking about video games. And honestly, out of all the video games that we love talking about, I'd wager a guess that we love talking about CRPGs, the most because, they are just the last 20 years of playing like games like Baldur's Gate, Icewind Dale, Neverwinter Nights. They have this kind of nostalgia and this feeling that kind of just reminds me of when I used to game when I was a kid.
So, do we have a CRPG to talk about today?
Oh, do we? We have Pillars of Eternity 2 Deadfire today. A very beautiful game from Obsidian Entertainment, which is actually located pretty close to us in Orange County, I believe.
Yeah, they're right down the street in Irvine from Blizzard.
So they're neighbors. So we'll treat them well. Not like it's actually that tough because, spoiler alert, this is a very, very enjoyable game. And actually, serious spoiler alert, we will most likely be spoiling this game for you. Mm-hmm. So keep that in mind. Personally, I think the journey is probably more important than the destination with games like this. But for those who don't want to lose like the big twists, maybe you should go play, come back, and listen to us talk about it.
Yeah, this is definitely going to be a conversation, like kind of a finale of the game, dissecting it, picking it apart. What did it do well? What did it not do well? So it's best if you jump in and play it yourself, which we both recommend you doing before sitting down and listening to this. But if you want it spoiled, that's fine too.
Here we are.
Here we are.
So Trevor, kind of curious what your initial thoughts were on picking this game up. It was released several months ago. So try to put yourself back there and try to tell me a little bit about what you thought about this game jumping in.
So I've been playing games like this for a long time. My dad bought Baldur's Gate 1 way, way long ago. And that was kind of my introduction into it. I would play it when he wasn't, and then I'd beat the game well before he did because I'm good at video games. But I've like you, I've grown up with this genre. I played Pillars 1. I was pretty excited when that came out. One of the very few things I actually kickstarted. Playing it, though, I was kind of disappointed. It felt like a lot of... So, maybe this was just my expectations, but I expected, like, a better Baldur's Gate 2. Like, take what we had there, improve on those systems, make it modern, and tell a story, tell a new story in that same space. And it didn't do that for me. It felt like half of kind of the games that came before it. Like, you didn't have basic things such as party relationships or love dynamics, really minor things, but it ends up adding up to me. So with Pillars 2, I was already on board because I didn't think Pillars 1 was bad. I just was a little disappointed.
Yeah, it sounds like you're saying it seemed a little bit undercooked.
Right. Like, yeah. It could have been more. I wanted more out of it. So Pillars 2, I was like, all right, I'm giving you a shot already. Don't need to advertise the game to me. I'm on board. Whenever it's out, it's out. Let's go. And I like this a lot. It definitely was closer to what I was expecting the first one to be. It took it in a few kind of fun directions with the ship stuff, which we'll talk about later, both good and bad. It brought back a lot of the features I expected from this type of game. It gave me a story I enjoyed. I thought it was good. It's not as grandiose as the ones that come before it, which is weird because it's dealing with a literal god.
Yeah, it's like it's so over the top in so many ways.
But yeah, it was a good journey. What about you? What'd you think?
I like really, really, really high level. Initially, I did not like it, and I love these types of games. Some of that was a little bit of like kind of like the residue, so to speak, from the first one, which I thought was, I thought I really enjoyed that CRPGs were continuing, but I was really disappointed in the way that combat played in the first one. It was a huge turnoff for me. I tend to be a bit more gameplay oriented, I think, than some when I play these games. Because they generally, CRPGs have such rich stories, and the relationships between characters are so important and vibrant that gameplay can take a second seat, or appears to. So anyway, that's enough about the first one. I thought it was a little bit busy on the combat side. Initially with this one, I was a little confused initially, even after playing the first one and beating it. I was a little confused in how it started out, and how kind of EFS kind of bursts out from the ground, conveniently destroying your base and forcing you to go from scratch. And actually, I was reading a bit about this recently and discovered that the reason for you starting back at square one was because when EFS, exploded your home, I forget what it's called, like Kale Nua or whatever.
Yeah.
It like takes a piece of your soul with it, and that's kind of like the sense of like, I have lost all of my accumulated abilities and powers since start at level 1, which I didn't really pick up on during the intro. But I mean, it's fine. Like you gotta. It's kind of like a Deus Ex Max kind of thing, right? You gotta like. It moves the story forward and allows you to start in a place where new players can jump in. They don't feel overwhelmed by all the abilities and powers. So that being said, I was a little confused starting out. The combat, I think, is significantly improved from the first one.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't really follow a lot of the feedback that was received post-launch for the first game, but if I had to guess, I would bet a lot of it would revolve around the combat language in that game being really muddy, partly due to the, like 7 companions plus pets. I didn't really know what was going on in combat. They reduced the companion capacity in this game, right? To like 5 characters from 7? Is that what it was?
Yeah, you're down to 5 from 6.
Okay. Yeah.
But if you have like a pet or a ranger, you're going to have more AI companions. But those are pretty basic and don't require a lot of management.
Which is nice.
Yeah.
They introduced, I think clearly they knew that was a problem, because they introduced that whole AI scripting system into the overall combat system, which is reminiscent of Dragon Age Origins, which anyone who plays CRPGs know it's probably one of the best ones out there in the past 15 years. Yeah, 15 years. I'll stick by that.
It's a very good AI system.
Yeah.
I found with this game, though, I had to use it because the default AI was so dumb. Like,
really?
There was a who's the mage? Aloth, or
Aloth.
Yeah, Aloth. He gets a mid-level game. He gets like a fireball spell. But I was noticing this with a lot of my casters. They would just throw it and hit half my party with it all the time, because the base AI scripted to, it's like, oh, when you start a fight, cast this spell. Who cares if it hits half your party and does all that? So it's like, no, you don't get to cast this spell unless I tell you. And I had to go and write AI for a number of my casters to say that. No.
Right.
I tell you when I want you to hurt my party members.
I'm the master here. Yeah. Did the scripting include? I'm pretty sure it had the ability to look for a grouping of enemy targets, but I don't remember if it had the ability to have like negative conditions, like if this, then don't like use this.
I don't recall. I don't think I set any of those up.
Right. I know they improved the AI scripting system in some subsequent patches, but initially there was like a massive list of different conditions you could use, but some of the things that I really wanted to do were not included on that list.
Huh? Like what?
I'm trying to remember right now. I think it was basically like the negative. I know, right? I think it was the negative condition scenarios where I could have multiple conditions for firing a single ability, because having a single positive condition is sufficient for many abilities, like the positive condition target ally or ally in my party has less than 25% health remaining, and it's like, clearly heal them. But I only that was sufficient for some of the more complex tactics that you expected out of your followers. Then again, like being able to pause, because this is like pausable real-time battles, it really allows you to make decisions that the AI clearly is incapable of making.
How did combat break down for you? Like, are you the type of person to just take your main character and control that only, and just write the AI for the rest of your companions and hope it works out? Or were you more of the micro commander, like moving each person individually and selecting each person's abilities?
Well, I found that the game in most cases was easy enough where I didn't have to do a lot of AI tweaks. I made a bunch initially because I just saw some glaring errors, but after that, I noticed that I could kind of let them run, and then I would step in when necessary. The only problem that I found with that was particularly with spellcasters, where abilities they run out of spells in that spell level, and I was personally I was biding my time to cast a specific spell, not realizing that they were just running out of charges, preemptively, because I hadn't really built anything in to tell them not to do that. So that was kind of the biggest problem that I ran into. So I started actually disabling some of the higher spell level spells, so that I would have them available to myself as like an oh shit button, so to speak.
I did the same thing.
Yeah.
I did the exact same thing, because I even with the cleric, I would run into situations where it's like, oh, you are casting the wrong spell right now, and now I don't have a heal. Thank you. Thank you.
Because that's a really binary. Like if you don't have that, that could be the end of the battle. And it's one thing for that failure to mean combat is going to take a bit longer and be more difficult, versus I am now going to lose because I don't have she has some Zodi, right? Has some powerful heals at her disposal.
Oh yeah.
And when you don't have them, they are game breakers.
Yeah, there are quite a few abilities she has where it's just like, all right, let's just full heal everyone. Another thing I remember we talked about before, like a big improvement on the second one over the first one, was the simplification of like debuff types.
Oh man, yeah. You already talked about that.
Yeah, because the first one I remember, like me and you both shared this problem. Like every spell created its own unique debuff, and they all did different things, and there was like 15 different ways you could slow someone, and it was so confusing to like manage how you have to dispel them and what is affecting your character, because they all have unique art and they're all 4 pixels big on your character, so you have to pause, mouse over, okay, what terrible thing is this character afflicted with? So this time around, things are really simplified, and that's good.
Right. I actually have a pretty funny example of that, because I was trying to we talked about it a bunch the previous game, about like you just said, and it still happens in this game. It's not nearly as prevalent. It doesn't happen as often in combat, but it is, I think, still a problem in their item system. So for instance, I'm gonna play the scenario out for you. I had just gotten this weapon in game called Griffin's Blade.
Okay.
And it's it's like a long sword. It's a one-handed sword. And it has this ability called Loyal Companion. And it just said, like, on the weapon affixes as like additional effects, grants Loyal Companion. I'm like, okay, cool. What's Loyal Companion? My first guess was like, maybe it summons like a Loyal Companion, right? That fights with me. It doesn't do any of that. So basically, my first thought was like, okay, clicks on Loyal Companion. Loyal Companion says, okay, use once per encounter. It does an allied AoE effect to provide steadfast for 12 seconds when the wielder is bloodied. I'm like, okay, first off, what's steadfast? Oh, steadfast provides +5 resolve. Okay. This is all me going like, buff to buff. I'm like, all right, well, what's resolve again? Okay, resolve improves will and deflection defense. Okay, what are will and deflection defense? So mouses over defenses. It's like, okay, will and deflection defense. Deflection used to resist most direct weapon attacks. All right, I actually understand that. I don't know what +5 to that is. And by the way, it's not +5 to that. It's +5 to resolve, which then affects the will defense, but not necessarily by 5. And then, reflex. And will is the, let's see, almost all mental attacks are opposed by will. And so basically, but then we haven't even finished this yet because it only provides this bonus when the character is bloodied. It's like, okay, well then what's bloodied? Between 50% health and 25% health is considered bloodied. Okay, so equipping this weapon provides a +5 to resolve for allied characters within 5 meters when the character that is equipping it is between 25 and 50% health. I have no way of taking that information and reverse engineering that into an understanding of how powerful that is, because I'm making that comparison of Loyal Companion against other buffs on other weapons. Because it's an exceptional quality weapon. I have multiple exceptional quality swords, and most of them are differentiated by a unique effect like this. I have no way of like rolling this information back to like a number, even just, this just guess mentally, so that I can make comparison against another weapon. And that is actually kind of my biggest, probably single problem for this game, is that it is so obscure and the real power of things seems so obfuscated that it's just difficult to kind of put that all in your head at once, and in doing so make a determination of what to equip. And as a corollary, when abilities do things like this, it's hard to understand when to use them in battle because you don't really understand their true effectiveness because there are so many steps. Anyway, this is a problem that has plagued the Pillars of Eternity games. I think part of the reason is because they made a decision to go with an entirely different system than things that people may be familiar with. Like D&D, or Warhammer, some more popular systems. So I think they were like, we're gonna go this entirely different direction, and they pulled it off. Like they created this full-fledged system, but it's just not really understandable, I think, to the average player.
That's the weird thing though, is they started with D&D as a base, right? And that's where I was coming in with a lot of my knowledge, which helps me quite a bit. So like, it has fortitude, reflex, and will as secondary defenses, in addition to whatever they call armor class, like deflection, I think, or whatever. But those three, like that's Dungeons and Dragons, like straight up. So that helped me. Even the term bloodied is they had that in like 4th edition, and that just means half health or lower. When you were saying like bloodied is half health and 25%, I just learned that right now from you. I just assumed it was 50% or lower because I know that term from 4th edition. I assumed that it would mean the same thing in a similar D&D fantasy role-playing type setting, and I was wrong. So
I never played 4th edition. That's interesting.
I totally get what you're saying. I ran into a lot of that problem, or a lot of those problems myself. What I ended up doing was just mentally simplifying it. So with that sword, for example, I would read all that, and in my brain, it would just basically translate to, this is a tanking sword. It makes you harder to kill for a small period. And like, that's all that it would register as in my mind. And when I would equip people, it would be like, when I'm equipping Matt Mercer, it's like, okay, I'm going to give you defensive themed items. So this is a defensive sword. I'm going to give you a defensive sword. Mm-hmm. Meanwhile, on my Ranger, I want offensive things. So if I got a weapon that gave me a defensive buff, I wouldn't equip it. And that's kind of how I would simplify it, at least in my brain. And that got me through most of the game.
Right. Right. I think that's probably the only way that you can really do it.
Yeah.
Except the other option being just ignore it entirely, and then why are you playing? But um, I I think it's a classic example of complexity without adding depth.
Mm-hmm.
Right? It's just the addition of complexity, but it doesn't actually provide the player with a better understanding. It does provide more information, but not necessarily a better understanding. So I wouldn't claim that this level of complexity actually allows the player to make better decisions. I think it actually provides the opposite. It obfuscates to the point at which it makes it more difficult to make decisions because it's harder to understand the impact of the choices that you make in your items in this example.
And it doesn't add anything to the game. Like that complexity. If that sword said +2 to fortitude and armor, and that's all it said when below half health, like if that was the line, perfect, done. That would not make that a less interesting item than what it is. Right. Or even if it was just +1 AC, like that would still be an interesting item because it's gone to the complete other end of the spectrum where if this, then this, but only for this period. And it's just like, well, it's too much. I don't care.
It's too situational.
Yeah. You've pigeonholed this item into a box, and I can't foresee the situation where I will need this. So, fuck it.
Because I'm not in this spot where I'm like watching the person who equipped this item to reach like below 50% health, but not below 25, and then to be like, this is my chance to do what? To do nothing. Honestly, it doesn't change anything. It seems like a pretty, when you have like 70 or 80 defense +5 result. Actually, I have no idea how much defense that adds, but let's just pretend that's 5. Like that's that's less than 10%. That's not a game maker. Like that doesn't change anything. It's just something that happens. Anyway, we probably talk about this all day because it's probably my number one gripe about this game mainly because it becomes more difficult to enjoy the rest of the game. Right. And like it gets in its own way, and I kind of wish that this type of stuff would step aside so that you could enjoy the things in the game I think that are interesting and that are needle movers. Particularly, the second half of the story I thought was something that was just really took off, and some of the follower companion relationships with you and with other companions. You usually don't see too much companion to companion relationship building or relationship dissonance that I saw in this game.
It's been a staple of a number of games, like and to varying degrees, right? So back in the Baldur's Gate days, you could have party members just flat out leave, right? If you go really against their alignment. If you're a chaotic good and you keep doing chaotic good things, your lawful evil party member is going to take off. But you're right, like it's not because, or not really affected by other members of your party causing them to take off.
Right. It's your choices and how that corresponds to the alignment of your companion.
Yeah. While in this game, it is absolutely like, hey, I don't like this other person that you're partying around with because of what they've been saying in dialogue, and that's really cool.
Right.
I thought the kind of motivators that each NPC had, or each of your party members, of like, this guy likes when you're kind to animals. This person likes when you're snarky. Those kind of different things, and each person has ones that they like and dislike. That was a really cool system. Where it kind of fell flat for me was in building the relationships with them, because, all right, say Takahu, right, like the walking sea anemone. I got him kind of late. I did a lot of exploring once I got my ship, and I didn't go to Nekataka for a long time. So even when I got to Nekataka, I solved like four of the little subzones of that city's problems and quest lines before I even went up to the palace. And then I get him. As a result, that is all content that I can't build relationships with him on.
Ah, I see.
And it is a finite amount. It's like, say it's 500 points, right? Whatever. I'm just making up a number. 500 theoretical possible relationship points with this character throughout the whole game. And I've done 300 of that without him. Mm-hmm. So the highest I can get is 200 now. That happened with a couple of my party members. I ran out of content to increase their relationship with me high enough to advance their storyline. And that felt really shitty.
Huh. This is funny. I never picked that character up. I mean, I know you've talked about him before. I'm aware of his existence, but
mm-hmm.
I guess fun fact, I never beat this game.
Okay.
I got like 30 or 40 hours in, and I just did like a lot of random stuff. And I got to basically just past Eothas and the Ashen Maw, or whatever that is. Basically, like, again, it seems like it's the end of the second act when he just kind of reveals his plan, essentially, and had been to Nekataka. I want to say Nehetkara, but that's Warhammer. I'd been to that palace a bunch of times, and I just had never seen that character. Yeah.
So, did you use the bird paladin girl?
Maya?
No,
yeah.
She was the ranger.
Oh. Yeah, I know.
What's her name?
I don't remember.
Palagina?
Oh, yes. Yeah. I actually replaced a deer with her because I didn't need the tanking.
So, I don't remember a lot of what I did in Pillars 1. It was a long time ago. I was like, oh, I'm going to replay it before Pillars 2 and remember what the story is. And I got like 2 hours in. I'm like, nope. So I made my backstory and I was like, oh, a generally good one. And then I run into her in Nekataka and she's just fucking mad at me for some reason. And I'm like, okay, well, I don't need to deal with you. Goodbye forever. And that was it.
Wow. You didn't recruit her?
No. She was so mad. And I don't remember what happened. So I'm like, oh, okay, bye. I think I said one snarky thing to her and she's just like, I'm not having any of your shit. Good luck with your life. There's a lot of those in the game. And it kind of just, what I found was, because I beat the game doing a pretty good character. And then I got, I don't know, like a quarter of it on a second playthrough being like a complete asshole and evil. And it really comes down to like, which choices are you picking most of the time? Are you picking the snarky choices, the honest ones, the stoic ones? And that would just completely lock you into one storyline or another on a lot of these quests. The thing I know, or one of the early ones, like the first island in the game, like you find the guy who got beat up from one of the Huana and she took his money, right? Like in the first.
Oh, yeah.
And then you go and you find her in her village and you try to resolve the situation. My good character got the money back, got her to apologize, situation resolved, got a reward. My evil character, he was just being snarky. It wasn't even evil. It was just like, how much honor do you really have? You took money from a guy you beat up, you know? And that's she's legit. Just like, well, fuck you. And then I have to attack her. And this is in her village. So for some reason, the entire village decides to attack me too. So I kill all of them. And then I get back to town and the mayor is just like, why did you kill their leader? It's going to be so hard to free your boat now. It wasn't. It was the exact same thing to free my boat eventually. But like,
this is Port Maje and like the Juana village right next to it, right?
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah, I murdered that village.
Wow.
They were dead. Over like, I don't know, 200 copper.
Right. Like, who even knows?
However much was in a pouch from a bar fight ended a village's life.
You're just the messenger. You're just telling it like it is.
And that's kind of the whole game, right? Like, is it Baldur's Gate 2 was this massive, massive epic storyline of like different chapters and moving from place to place with a few kind of side quests sprinkled here and there. But for the most part, it was a massive storyline. And that's what you were playing through. This game is a lot of very, very small contained stories just everywhere. Like every island you go to with like a dungeon, right, is there is a storyline for that dungeon. There's a storyline for that island, or the pirates have their overarching storyline. The different trade companies have their overarching storylines. And as a consequence, the main one with you and Aothos, it doesn't feel super cool until towards the end.
Right.
And that's one thing I was a little disappointed with. I liked it though. Like I liked the Aothos storyline. But I didn't like just I don't know. It felt short to me. It could have been a so much more of a focus. And that's the downside with all these open world, RPGs. If you want to take this route, your main storyline's going to suffer because you have to have content.
Yeah. Pacing is super difficult with an open world game.
Yeah. How do you pace something that someone can do in any order?
Right. Yeah, because if you restrict it, it seems like you're gating content because you essentially are. And then if you allow it, then someone gets through the game in, an hour and,
Oh, yeah. I'm sure you could sprint this game in like sub 4 hours.
Right. And like, yeah, you get the main story, but you wouldn't get all the enriching content and like the relationships, which are technically ancillary, but you need them to all combine to create a story that feels like it has like this just epic feel to it. Just like, Odyssey type, just amazing like high fantasy adventure type scenario.
The one other thing the story did really well was the brief kind of meetings almost with you and the pantheon of gods. I thought that was handled so well. Especially like, so I've been playing D&D since my teens, and once you start getting into the kind of higher level content in Dungeons and Dragons, like level 14, 15 and up, some of the gods start coming into play, and you realize just how insignificant you are in the grand scheme of things, like when you're dealing with concepts like immortality and like the entire cycle of life and death. It gets heavy, and you're like, I thought I was really strong because I can kill bandits, right? And now it's like I'm dealing with world-ending stuff. And this game does that, and it does it really well. Like early on, you're just listening in on these conversations with all the gods, and you speak up, and they either just ignore you or they get mad that you're speaking.
Yeah. And you're clearly out of your depth, and they make it clear to you in case you've forgotten that you do not know what you're talking about.
And that was awesome. I love that. And then you see the dynamic shift as the game progresses of like, they realize they can't do anything and you have to do something for them. So then it's them kind of trying to tell you what to do, but they're not asking for your help. They're telling you to do what they want you to do.
Right. But they still can't force you because...
Right. But they need you to.
Right. And that's actually a really cool point to bring up, because you don't discover till like the second half of the story that they are not in control of the situation.
Not at all.
And if anyone is, other than Aothos, it's you.
Yeah.
And so initially you realize that they're making these demands, and you're like, well, it's like 6 gods are telling me to do this thing. Like, I should probably do this thing. And then you start to realize that they're actually desperate, and you are really the only hope that they have. And they have not really come to terms with that, which is funny because they're gods, but I guess, hubris and all that. And then you discover that you are really the one who has control, except for Aothos. which I thought you were right. I thought that was like super interesting, and not just like the fact that happens, but like that whole transition where when you kind of start to discover when you see the cracks start to form when they start talking and arguing with each other, and you're like, wait, you're not like, and you're not omnipresent like unified forces. Like you are, a series of fractured entities, and you don't really know what the best move is. Like you have I guess we should go into it a little bit. Like the whole premise of the story is really that oh man, this actually might take a second. So the idea in this game world is that as entities, as like humans or kith or whatever, they die, their souls kind of go into this like cycle that then get like almost like reincarnated and spit back out at the beginning, and then they continue like they have a new life, the same soul but a new life, and then this is a cycle. They call it the wheel in the game, right? And Aethos's whole shtick is like, this is essentially slavery in a way, like for your souls, because you don't really have any choice over the matter, and the only reason the wheel really exists is to keep these gods continuing, and I'm going to break the wheel, both literally and figuratively, and so that souls will not now they won't reincarnate anymore. And that's his whole setup, and that's kind of like where he is. And once you kind of discover that, it's really hard to know what the right choice is. On one hand, breaking the wheel gives you some sort of like meta control over your lives, right? Over your soul's life, but it also prevents you from, well, at least you don't know this, but like based on your knowledge, you're like, well, this is it then. If I break the wheel, then when I die, then I don't come back. And it's an interesting question. Like, would I rather have an immortality in chains, even if those chains are invisible to me? Or would I rather have one life that is completely and totally free of outside influence? That's a great question.
Yeah, and
the gods don't know what the answer is. I mean, they know what they want because they want to preserve themselves. But like, as far as like what's the right move, like they don't really. At least when I was playing, didn't really seem to entertain that, like at a philosophical level, of whether or not it was right or not, because they were so focused on their own survival.
Did you look up the endings or
no?
Okay, so Aothos I loved too. It's great to have a bad guy, quote unquote, that's not just an evil guy.
Right.
Like he is doing something that he believes is in the best interests of all humanity, right? Like this is the correct thing, and your interactions with him, it comes across almost like a pity, right? Like he's pitying you for not being able to realize that what he's doing is for the greater good. And when you finally get to the end, it's not this big combat encounter and boss fight with this giant green stone man. It's a conversation. And what happens, and whether he breaks the wheel or he doesn't, or if the gods stick around to help out or they don't, or however it plays out, is basically you talking to him and having a conversation and giving your argument. And that was very, very cool.
I mean, because how are you supposed to fight something like that?
Right. You actually have that option. You have the option to be like, no, I'm going to fight you. And he's like, that would be such a sorrowful end to this journey. And you would accomplish nothing. And then like that dialogue option is like, whatever, I don't care. Fuck you. Let's fight. And he just one-shots you. And,
good. And like, he should.
He's a 500-story tall green statue man god. What are you gonna do with your bow and arrow, right?
Right. Oh, it's okay. I have loyal companion. You can't get bloodied if you get killed with one hit.
I want to talk about the endings a little bit.
Yeah.
So what ends up happening is you find out like Aothos is going to that machine, the wheel. It is a physical thing that this ancient civilization built, and he's going to go smash it and break it, literally. But it's in the middle of this like lost city. It's constantly surrounded by storms, and no one has been able to break through that to get to the city to investigate it ever since it got turned on. So the game kind of presents you with 5 paths to get into it. And it's ally with each of the 4 factions or go yourself. And if you go yourself, you need to buy the best sails in the game and the best hull in the game, which are incredibly expensive. And then like the pirates have this like ghost pirate ship that they think can get through. Everyone's got their own idea for what can go through. It's just, who do you want to ally with? I didn't like that because I didn't want to. I don't know. None of the factions felt great to me. I didn't really like any of them as like, oh, you know what? You have everyone's best interest in heart. Or I think I appreciate your ideals. Like the Hawana were just like, we're a nation, we exist. You know, with all the positives and negatives that come with that. Like they were really shitty to the poor in their town. So it's not like they're this benevolent nation.
Yep.
And then you got like the 2 trading companies, which are all about them. And then you got the pirates, you know, which are just pirates, and they're cool, you know, but whatever. So I went with option 5. The you know what? I'm going to go in by myself. And I did almost every island in the game. Like I cleared them out. I made a ton of money. I bought the best stuff in the game, and I sailed in by myself, and I made it through the storms. And I'm exploring, like, you get a boss fight as soon as you enter, like the guardian of the island, you kill him. Then you go through, and you turn off the machine that's causing the storms. And on your way to confront Aethys for the final encounter, it just, like, summons, like, it ends up being the last fight you ever do in the game. And it was pathetic. So for me, it just grabbed, like, I believe it was the Royal Deadfire Company. It just like, haha, this is our island now. And there was like 6 guys, and it just killed them. And it's like, okay. It was a fraction of the difficulty of the Guardian of the Island when you first arrive. And I do my thing with Aethys. I decide, you know, I'm gonna break the wheel. Gods, you go away. Mankind, we're gonna try to figure this out on our own. And then in the storyline, what I expected to happen was no one gets this island. I get this island. I am the fucking watcher.
Right.
I just made a deal about all of humanity. This is my place. Fuck all of you. You can come in and check this shit out, but this is my place now. Yeah. This is my new fort. That doesn't happen. Instead, like in the narration of the ending, it's just like, oh, the watcher leaves and everyone fights over it. And I'm like, I would not do that. This character would not do that. And it ends up being like the worst possible outcome. Because it just plunges the entire region into war because everyone's fighting over this island.
Because you didn't really like lay claim to it. Because I think it sounds like you would be one of the only entities that could claim the island. Other people would be like, okay, I get it.
And then they would court your favor or whatever. And that's what I expected. It was like, I'm going to lay claim to this island. I didn't think that was weird. Like, you know, I was the watcher of a fortress 10 level, like when I was a baby adventurer, and now I'm dealing with the gods. I can get a whole island to myself.
I think that's fair.
So that felt kind of disappointing.
Right.
I don't know. I was bummed by that. Also, more than, I think it was like 2 of my companions' quest lines terminated on that island too. So there was nothing I could really do after that. Or I didn't get any really cool rewards from them.
Like terminated, like were abandoned or were completed?
Were completed.
Okay.
So like Takahu's whole thing is like, I want to restore the water shapers and figure out why their power is declining and that kind of thing. And you find like the source of the water shaper powers on that island. And he's like, cool, I got it, thanks. And then like the quest ends, and then the next literal thing I did was fight the Deadfire guys, and then Aothas, and like that was the end of the game.
Does he become more powerful from finishing the quest line? No.
If he did, I didn't notice.
Yeah, which is the same thing, really.
Right. So I got like nothing out of that, and that kind of sucked.
Did you get a sense of pride and accomplishment?
Oh my god.
All right, I had to say it. Sounds like you did not. That is crazy. That is kind of how I expected. Not like that's your specific problems with the ending, but like the basic large moving pieces is how I expected it to play out. Because I mean, I guess that's the whole thing from the beginning.
I think we got into the story quite a bit. One thing I'd like to dive into is the entire kind of the ship systems and the exploration and the islands, because that's really what this game did that's unique to other CRPGs.
Agreed.
How do you think it played out?
The exploration system. Do you want to talk about both on boat and off boat, or you want to talk about just boats?
Let's talk about boats.
Okay. Exploring was boring. There was really nothing. Like Pirates, Sid Meier's Pirates did a better job at exploration than Pillars of Eternity 2 did. Because at least pirates had things to do other than fighting other ships. The seafaring system in Pillars was entirely you're either traveling or you're fighting a ship. And ship fighting, like you've said, is basically a series of menus. And that is no fun.
That was so weird the first time you get into ship combat.
Right. I feel like you're missing something, right?
Yeah. It's like, what's going on? Am I setting a loadout before I go into battle? Like, no. This is happening.
No,
okay.
This is the actual combat? Oh.
Okay, I'm playing in mud right now. All right.
It's like Legends of the Red Dragon all over again.
Did you pretty much ignore all of that and sail directly into every ship?
Because that's what I did. And then I started avoiding every ship because combat seemed to have no upside. I mean, yeah, you get stuff, but none of it really mattered.
I mean in like the actual like you hit another ship combat menu comes up. Instead of like doing the whole thing with like getting the cannon angles and, you know, turning port and starboard, I just sailed straight and rammed every ship.
Oh.
And then just had the combat on deck. Because that I would just mop that up real quick and be done.
Right, and because like actual party-based combat is infinitely more compelling than the ship combat that was included in this game. Yep. I avoided ship combat at every turn. Although, unlike you, as opposed to going in, I would just avoid the ships entirely. Okay. Because I just had no interest. And I actually enjoy ship combat, like Empire, Total War, Napoleon.
Oh, yeah.
Games that I really enjoyed the way they handled ship combat.
Sea of Thieves?
Yeah, oh yeah, definitely. And I understand that this is not meant to be those games, and it's not supposed to be, well, I don't know what it's supposed to be, but it didn't seem like it was intended to be a core feature. It seemed like it was an answer to a problem, which was clearly you're going to engage other ships, you're going to see them and find them, and it's a game centered around ship exploration, there should probably be combat involved. And then like this is kind of what came out of that, and I don't know, man, that just felt like it was tacked on. It was not rewarding both in game or out of game. Ship buffs like new sails, new hulls, the bonuses they provided were not very chunky. You know, they didn't really feel like they made a difference. And there are a lot of things that you just couldn't understand, like how many more turns do I have before this cannon can fire? It's like, well, I hope you wrote that down somewhere. And they just handled wind really strangely, as if like every combat, like the wind advantage would swap or change based on like your helmsman's ability. It was like your helmsman ability and a random roll versus their helmsman ability, and their random roll was whoever would get the wind gauge next. And in ship combat in other games, that's just not how it plays out. Like if you get like the advantage in wind, you usually end up maintaining it just because of like how you are positioned. And even though both ships are moving, they're both dealing with the same wind. So if you're already in an advantageous position, you're more likely to remain in that position. So it's like stuff like that, which I don't think just didn't translate very well. It's like, why are you including the system where it feels like it doesn't act the way it should? There's really nothing I liked about ship combat except when you ram the other ship and actually engage in party combat.
Yeah, the ship to ship combat, like the party combat on ships, that was cool.
Yeah.
So I have a bit of a different perspective because I did a ton of it. Because I had to. Bounties end up being like an incredibly good source of money, and I needed a bunch of money to make my boat big and strong. Boat upgrades were so ludicrously expensive and for minimal gains that was frustrating for a lot of it. I didn't know what any of my positions did on my ship. Like, I assumed having a 4-star cannoner was better than having a 1-star. I don't know what that did to my hit percentage. I don't know what having a navigator did. I just know the game yelled at me if I didn't have one. So I had to put a person there. And it would passively go up. So I did get a lot out of doing ship combat, like reward-wise, like in-game rewards. I got, like, I would loot a bunch of stuff. I'd get the money for killing the bounty. So that, I don't know. I made a good amount of money doing it, but I agree, it was not fun. Like, I wonder, is that engine just incapable of doing something like that? Like 2 moving ships? Like, and doing combat in that way?
I don't know. I mean, they do real-time combat all over the place.
Right?
Why can't a companion just be a ship?
Now I know. Yeah, like maybe there was some weirdness with like once 2 ships collide, how do you do nav mesh? Like,
yeah,
how do you paint that collision? I know that was like one of the major technical hurdles for Black Flag, and you know when 2 ships collide. I remember seeing a dev diary like a long time ago, and it would like actually show the collision mapping and how it would like dynamically update and everything once you had 2 boats next to each other.
Sounds expensive.
Yes, but that was a ship game, and you had to do that, so it was necessary tech debt.
Right.
But then this is also a ship game.
Yeah, it is, and it's almost like they didn't decide whether or not they wanted to make that a primary feature. So they didn't do. It seems like they just didn't make a decision almost, and they were just like, "Well, this is kind of what came out of it, so I guess we're just gonna do this." And they're like, and I could see some of the positions saying, "Ship combat is ancillary at best. Like, let's focus on we have development time to spend. Let's focus on making party combat good, or other aspects of the game." And I could understand hearing that and being like, yes, that makes sense to me. But also, I see the ship combat, and it's like, this is not telling me that you wanted me to engage in this feature. It's telling me that like you needed to solve a problem, and you technically have solved the problem, which is 2 ships can engage in combat, and there's a winner at the end. So, I don't know. I don't know what the intent was.
Does this game get significantly elevated if you have like Assassin's Creed Black Flag levels of combat with ships? Does like, yeah, it makes the game better, but like does that raise this up into like a masterpiece?
Like move the needle? Like I don't think so. Like I think at the end of the day, ship combat is secondary at best to the rest of the game. But you get in this weird spot when something is like peripheral but necessary, and you're kind of like, what do we do? I don't know. Like the whole and more complexity without depth. Like, okay, how many dudes do I need to hire, to be on my ship? Oh, this guy is not a cannoneer, but I need a cannoneer. You know how like when they don't have a star next to that skill, you can still put them in that position, but they don't gain experience in the position.
Right.
And then it was stuff like your captain level could go up, but I have no idea what that meant. And I was looking for that.
I got an achievement for maxing it out.
Cool.
I don't know what else it did.
Yeah. And like, I don't need different types of like food to equip on my ship. Like, come on, buddy. Like,
There's
stop.
400 things to eat in this game.
Yeah.
Oh my god, we were talking about that. There's almost as many items as an MMO.
Yeah.
And you don't need it.
But why? Yeah.
Like the enchanting system. And it's like, well, you need these 3 things and then 5 of this color gem. And then it's just like, who cares?
Yeah. Yeah.
Look at, I wish I could show a screenshot of my bags by the end of the game. And it's like, I have 600 items just sitting there. I don't know if I'll need them ever. I have enough money from selling the fancy weapons I get, and killing pirates. What?
Yeah, and it has all these consequences too when it bloats the inventory. Even just speaking about like ship food, and since ship food, it can also be used as like party food.
Yep.
Which is, I guess, means fewer different items overall, but it made each item more complex because there was like a ship-based buff for the food, and then there was like a party-based buff for the food, and they were different, and so like I didn't understand why that complexity was introduced because it didn't I never made any fun decisions based off of that. It was really just like, oh, I'm losing morale. Why? Oh, I don't have water equipped or whatever. I should probably just do that. And I just don't. It was me just like filling in the blanks. It's kind of as opposed to making cool decisions.
It was a tax.
Yeah.
It wasn't a fun decision. Like, right. I really quickly realized there was like one type of fish I could buy at Nekataka for very cheap, and it would give positive morale. And I just bought like 2,000 of them, and like that was my food for the game. And then I would have different food that I would eat as the party. Like, oh, I want increased attack or I want stamina, and like I would buy fewer of that, and that was the system. Like, right? I bought all the stuff. I put it in the little menu, and then I ignored it for the rest of the game.
Yep, that was it. And there's an entire system based off of that, and that's what you got out of it. Feels bad.
This game has crafting?
Oh god, I hate it. I hate crafting in this game.
I crafted one thing. I crafted like a healing potion. And then I remember I went in to go craft something else, and it was like, you can't do that, of course, because you don't have this material. And I had no idea where in this entire game I was going to get this material, and I didn't care enough about crafting a potion for +5 resolve or whatever to go find this herb that only grows on one island to make it.
Yep.
So I never used the system, and it was dead. The end.
That made me think I would have appreciated a system similar to The Witcher, where the interesting part is like discovering the recipe and crafting it that first time, and then after that you use some like generic item to just refill your uses, and that way you're not like, you don't have to keep on hunting down materials. Like, the enjoyment, if there is enjoyment to be gained out of the system, I think is like hunting down cool recipes and being able to do something neat once you discover that recipe, like as in create something that's cool. But after that, like, I don't want to keep searching for freaking items. Like, I did the part that was interesting. Like, crafting things for the first time, for the most part, is generally when it's interesting to craft. And then after that, it's just like, I've already been here. Just let me keep using the thing that I've unlocked. And that's not how Pillars kind of plays crafting system out. And you're right that like it's not exciting, and it's not compelling, and it just seems to be just work, and so you just ignore it.
Yeah, like I have plenty of other consumables that I pick up and potions that through killing things or from buying them from a store. What do I need to craft it for? What is different about this? And maybe there are super powerful ones out there.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, but you never got there because the initial like your first time experience into the system is underwhelming, and so you're just like, I'm not gonna pursue this. Like I have a million things to do. It's like a freaking 50-hour game anyway. I'm not gonna sit here and just craft small healing potions. I'm gonna find off the next guy kill anyway.
I don't need anything from this, and it is work to get anything out of it.
Yep.
And that was it.
Yep.
Enchanting, very similar. I never hunted anything.
No.
It was, I'd open an item, I would see what I already had to enchant it, I would pick that, and then I would close the menu.
Mm-hmm.
I was never like, ooh, I need to go find one of these blue gems to get this ice enchantment on this bow. Never. I was like, how many do I have? Oh, I have 4. I need 1. Cool, done, applied.
Yeah. It's like, and if you don't, you're like, all right, I guess I'll come back later. Or maybe I'll have it then. Like, yeah, I won't even remember it. When I pick it up, I'm probably not even going to notice.
Because items are so fluid in this game. Like, you get a new piece of gear and it's just gone, and all the money and the mats you wasted on enchanting that old piece, they're gone. And if you spent like 5 hours hunting for an upgrade for that, oof, that's a waste of time.
Yeah, better spent leveling and encountering new monsters that will drop cooler stuff, and yeah. It's funny that like the crafting progression is like best served by not focusing on crafting, instead focusing on exploration, and then crafting just kind of comes out of that. I will say that I thought enchanting was significantly better than crafting. For a bunch of reasons. One, it's simpler. Secondly, it's all the origin point for enchanting is the item that you actually presumably like and want to see more powerful. So you can be like for instance with Zodi's lantern. I really enjoyed how unique items you could upgrade their unique affixes. That was the coolest part of enchanting.
Yes.
And that was the only thing that I ever in crafting that I ever came back to was like, because it's a really easy like flow, because you're just like, this is cool, I want this to be stronger, right click, enchant, here's a list of things, that I can actually look at what they do before I spend the crafting materials on them, and then some of the many of the unique affixes had 1 or 2 upgrade paths for the affix, and that was really cool. And I think that was the crafting system. I think the best it got was unique item enchants. Definitely.
Yeah. I remember there was a bow that I had on my ranger for like half the game because I kept upgrading it because I loved it so much. It was like one of the first upgrades I got for it instead of firing 1 arrow, it would instead fire like 5.
Yes.
That did like a 1/5 of the damage. But then each of those could crit. So it's effectively doing more damage. And then I had some other effect on me, either through my character or an item or something, where wherever I crit, it would do an explosion. So I could... That was great. I love that weapon. That weapon was so cool. Enchanting was really good.
Yeah.
The only piece was I didn't want to go and hunt down stuff for it. And also, occasionally I would pick something and other options would disappear.
Yes, and it wasn't clear when that was going to happen.
Correct. Because sometimes it wouldn't, and I could get all those unique effects on an item. And sometimes it would actually be an A or B choice, and I wouldn't know. The UI didn't tell me.
Right. It's presented in a single list. Yeah, that was a problem too. Fortunately, it's a problem solved by quick saving and quick loading, but when that's your answer, you've kind of already failed.
Right.
Right.
That UI needed some work.
It needed a lot of work.
I wonder, was that a backer goal maybe or something that just came in at the last minute?
What, crap loads of inventory like items?
No. Enchanting in general.
Okay. I mean, enchanting was in the first one.
Okay.
I'm pretty sure. I'm like 90% sure it was in the first one, but I don't think it. I don't think you could. Actually, I don't want to say. I remember you could at least in like superior to exceptional, whatever, fine to superior to exceptional. I don't remember if they had unique affixes, but it did exist. Yeah, I really hope the crafting system in general would have been overhauled. I was kind of hoping that they would have realized how there were huge sacrifices I think made to the game's complexity to allow for this inventory management system, and I I don't know if they were like it's CRPG, it has to have this, or what, because it felt like the inventory system in general, like the fact that, for instance, that when you kill like an enemy and you loot it, it's almost like the Fallout system where a lot of other games that are trying to be more realistic, where you'll be like, now I see everything that they've ever equipped and fired at me. And Pillars didn't do that completely, but you would be in situations where you're like, now I have 50 longswords, and they're all like normal longswords. And what past like level 10, like what do you do with normal items, right? Like
you sell them.
You get rid of them. They are a waste of space. That being said, I was confused that they included that, but then didn't have a way for me to say, like Darkest Dungeon does this, where you can just say, if I get this trinket ever again, automatically sell it, like mark it as junk essentially. And Pillars did not have that, which like I can't dismantle normal weapons, so what am I going to do with this? And the answer is I'm going to sell it, right? Like you said. Then just cut out the middleman, like junk it or turn it directly into gold when I pick it up. Like, don't even show me a normal longsword anymore. I do not need to see this in the game ever.
Well, the game does do scaling, right? As you level up, enemies stop having normal longswords and they all have fine or superior. But the same problem still exists.
Right.
Right? Like, I have my special kick-ass multiple ghost arrow bow. Every exceptional bow that drops is going to the vendor.
Yep.
And that was a great source of money, but it could have been money on that character.
Right. And interesting, because then they included systems to not solve the problem, but to make the problem not as painful. Like the stash system. You can pick things up directly to stash, and that's actually the default. And the stash can be interacted with at literally any time except while you're in combat.
And character encumbrance isn't a thing.
Yep. Yeah. So it was definitely clear to them that that's a problem, and as opposed to, from my perspective, trying to solve the root cause, which is just general inventory bloat, they instead developed systems to manage the bloat, not manage the inventory, but manage inventory bloat, which is different. So,
I think it stems to,
is that just like a CRPG conceit?
It's so many systems and so many aspects of this game are just it owes too much of its identity to Baldur's Gate 2. Even the loot icon, the glove holding the little ring, that's the exact same icon for Baldur's Gate, right? Like, that can change. The move icon being the just, it's the same. It's the same. And you don't have to do that. You can be your own game. So I'm wondering if it was like, so Baldur's Gate did the same thing. If you killed an enemy, it dropped exactly what it had.
Yeah.
But every character had a weight limit based on their strength stat, just like Dungeons and Dragons. So you had a finite amount of inventory slots until you got like your bags of holding and that kind of fun stuff, which was great. But you had to manage what you picked up based on how much you could carry. And I think maybe they started this game off where, okay, well, they're going to drop what they're equipping because we have to. It's a CRPG. And it's like, oh, well, we want to have this crafting system. Okay, cool. Make a bunch of items for crafting. Oh, well, we want to have food and, that be a thing. All right, make a bunch of items for that. And then it all comes together when they're doing integration. And they're like, oh, shit. I can't hold all these items. Where are my bag slots? Like, my characters are getting overburdened, and then at that point maybe it's just too late, right? Like,
Right.
We know how games are developed.
Right.
Sometimes when by the end, when everything starts coming together, it's just like, oh, there are problems here.
Right. And then the the fun, like, looking back is like, well, we just shouldn't have done it this way, and you're like, cool, but here we are, and now we're not going to remove this feature entirely, because at that point it's integral. It's like, now
Right.
we just need a way to manage it, and you're like, okay, well, there's some things that I can tack on. I can, like, like the sorting function is one way, and like filters, and they added like a search bar later to your inventory, and those are all band-aids, right?
Yeah, getting rid of encumbrance, not worrying about any of that. Infinite item slots, like band-aids.
Right. Right. To a system that I think it's just seen it's just an old, it's has a lot of age to it. It's an archaic system that, in my perspective, it does more wrong than it does right. But if you would ask me like 15 years ago, I probably wouldn't have said that.
Right.
Yeah, I'd have been like, no, man, this is Baldur's Gate. This is D&D. Like, this is,
You have to do it this way.
yeah, like, what, you're gonna just kill a guy and he's just not gonna drop anything, but like he was attacking you with a sword? Like, that's crazy. And now I'm kind of on the other side of that fence.
Yeah, that kind of circles back to this game. Like, I think it was a very good game. I enjoyed my time with it a lot, but I wanted to elevate these systems that have been around for decades.
Yep.
I don't want you to just keep inheriting that. You can say a different line other than "you must gather your party before venturing forth." Like, that's okay to record a different line for that now. Like, I get it. You can move on. You can be better. And that's why maybe I overlooked a lot of the flaws with exploration and the islands and sailing around, just because it was very new.
Yeah.
So I enjoyed that a lot. I don't know, just because it was different and unique that this game did.
Right, and in a lot of ways, it seemed like this game was kind of beholden to what had come before it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, and I don't know what kind of game it would have been if they had gone a different direction. I just know that, like, the game as it currently stands, it's easy to draw a line back to where these systems originated.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then, of course, you run into the problem with any genre game where if you go too far, then you alienate the whole reason people have come in the first place.
Right. Right. And your new system might be better, but if no one gives it a chance, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Yeah. I feel like we've been talking a lot about stuff we don't like, which is too bad, because I think this game.
We've been
does a lot,
talking
right?
about aspects that could have been better.
Right. Right.
Well, what's an example of something that the game did well?
In the vein of voice acting, I think there were a few characters I wanted to call out, particularly for, I think, not only being great voice acting, but also a great choice for the character. I thought Ethos was excellent. I thought his lines were delivered well. I thought it would be kind of difficult to toe the line between, like, compassionate yet at the same time, like, above compassion, and patient yet still driven, right? Because it never really, I didn't play the very end, but Athos, in my experience, never appeared impatient with you, and did not make light of what he was doing, because you even talk about him sometimes. You're just like, who are you to take this high ground? Like, getting through this story, like, you've just killed thousands of people,
Yeah.
like, just as incidentally. And he even has, like, a line where he's just like, yeah, and that's regrettable, and this is towards something greater to save, like, these souls in the future. And I think those lines are delivered very well. They're not arrogant, but they don't dodge responsibility. They're just kind of like, yep, this is the way it is, and it's really unfortunate, They're somehow compassionate, and so yeah, I thought he did a great job. I really enjoyed the Juana speech cadence and the expressions they used, because they say "I say" a lot.
Mm-hmm.
So Queen Onakaza II, the queen of the Juana, I thought was an excellent choice for her, both her voice acting and the delivery of the actual voice, and then the fit to the character I thought was excellent, as well as her brother I thought did a great job as well. And I really like how in both in the first Pillars and in this one, they spend a lot of time just fleshing out the background, and so that when you meet a character who is a prominent character in the mythos, um, they have a story, they have motivation, and in the case of the Juana, they actually have like a linguistic system that is distinct and recognizable, and I thought that was really cool.
And kind of the so Pillars 1 didn't have this. They introduced this in Tyranny and brought it over into Pillars 2, where they would use terms in the text or like a specific word from the Juana language, and you could mouse over it and have it explained to you.
Nice.
That helped me so much. And I really, really loved it. Pillars 1 didn't have that, and I found myself getting lost quite a bit.
But didn't they have some mouse over text? Which
Maybe,
not for language?
Not at the extent that it's here. Okay. I really believe that came in with Tyranny.
Maybe that was where I saw it. I agree. I really, really, really enjoyed the fact that I could mouse over things and read about them without having to move to a different menu. I think it was. I know we were just talking about how some systems in the inventory were like band-aids for bigger problems, and I think that you could make the case that that's what this is also, but it didn't feel like that. It felt like the game was being honest about the fact that there is a lot of lore, and unsurprisingly, you will not remember any arbitrary piece at any given time, and thusly, you will not be able to make great decisions because you have no context. And so we're going to provide you with this, and maybe it's a crutch, sure, but it's a good crutch. It is a great crutch to have because it's honest about the breadth of the lore, but it still wants you to be able to make good decisions that you feel happy about.
Well, I mean, it's kind of the same thing in D&D. You know, there are things that your character knows that you don't know as a player.
Mm-hmm.
And like I would run into this in my games where I know my character remembers the name of this person, but I as a player forgot to write that down. So I could tell the GM, it's like, I don't remember who that is. Who is that? Right?
Mm-hmm.
It's the same thing, really. It's your character in this world would know what that means.
Right.
You would remember who this god is because you literally have spoken to them.
Right. And when in reality, I loaded a game from 2 weeks ago and I forget.
Exactly.
Yeah. And all of the god voices I thought were really good. I like you mentioned earlier, I really enjoyed those interactions. They were really powerful. And I like how they changed throughout the game, you know, to being first like you were basically an ant to then you discover you're basically holding all the cards.
Really, really good writing on this game.
Yeah.
I think the first one was a little too verbose.
Mm-hmm.
A little over reliance on reading and just getting through flowery language. I think this one had a much better balance.
Yeah. The first one felt like they were in love with the language so much they just wanted to live in it. And the language, I mean, it was very good, so I can understand that. I mean, I would be blown away if I could write something like that. Like, they did a really good job. But I think the second one was able to not only improve, but also, what's the word? Kind of like distill it a bit without kind of, they didn't go all Anne Rice on this when they just like wrote like 50 pages for something that could be 2 pages.
I think we've exhausted our notes on this game.
Yeah, I think you might be right.
Got any final thoughts?
I feel like we spent most of the time knocking this game down, but I want to make clear that I really enjoyed it. And it definitely had its flaws, but they were completely outshone by things this game did really well, which was present a very compelling story, that had overall had both stakes, personal stakes, and grandiose, like universal stakes. I think it did a great job of transitioning you into like this prime mover in the story from being just like, a dude that meets some gods, or a girl. And I think it's very difficult to do that, and they did a great job. They really improved combat, which was my biggest problem with the first game. I want to see what comes next. I don't know. I haven't really been watching like what the plan is after this, but I really want them to challenge themselves in finding a new way to represent old systems. I think if they can do that, then they can really evolve the genre, because there are no other CRPGs out there that are doing this any better. And I think the genre can be better. And I want to see Obsidian pull that off.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Like we saw this revitalization of, the top-down isometric RPG. I want to say maybe 5 years ago. That is when, maybe 5 or 8 is when it really started picking up speed, where you got like the Shadowruns coming back, you got Wasteland, you got Pillars 1, and everything's kind of coming back. Is like, no, people like these types of games, but there really hasn't been a real significant push forward in the genre since they started coming back, other than, look, they're pretty and in 3D now.
Right. And I mean, the graphics engine for Pillars 2 seemed much improved. Lighting was definitely something that you really saw in a different light.
Oh yeah, there were beautiful moments. The whole intro section was phenomenal, I thought.
Yeah, I really enjoyed the dynamic lighting from Zodi's Lantern. Mm-hmm. It was kind of hilarious when it would still show when you were sneaking around, which was funny. So I felt like she put a cover on it. I don't know. Maybe no one can see soul light. I don't really know. But yeah, the lighting looked great. The water looked okay. Yeah. I mean,
yeah. No, you're right though. Like that. At the end of the day, just next one, just push it forward a bit more. Like keep going forward. You've proven you can stand on your own. You still take too much from Baldur's Gate, but your story, you did a really good job. I love the world that you've built here. I love the gods and the dynamic with all the people. I just want to see the genre push forward a bit more next time.
Right. I really have nothing else to add.
Yeah. Play this game. As critical as we were, seriously, it's out of love, and it's just pointing out things and different decisions and different paths that could have been taken.
Right.
But at the end of the day, I think I speak for both of us when we say this game's worth your time.
Definitely. Well, thank you for listening, and we'll catch you next time. Do you know what we're going to play next?
Oh, I think we'll take our listeners on a bit of an odyssey. Until then, thanks for joining us.